We all do it. We'll invest in certain items that we think are not important, yet really expensive things are going on them, thinking that we're saving a few bucks, when in reality, we're not. So let me help you save a lot of headache. This is why you need to invest in good gear. Yes, even your mic stand. Let's dive in. Look, there's a time and place to buy cheaper or budget-friendly options on certain gear. But if you think about it, at least my logical test in my head, if there's something expensive going on this piece of equipment, like an expensive camera, expensive microphones, lighting, whatever, then the equipment itself that's holding that gear needs to also be of high quality, or I need to invest a little bit into it to make sure it doesn't damage the more expensive stuff, if you can avoid it. So one of those cheap stuff or cheap options, a lot of people kind of neglect. But if you're serious about this whole videographer thing, YouTube thing, and if you're really serious about doing client work, you should invest in a high quality mic stand. So right behind me, right here to my left, which would be your right, furthest right, is a professional boom arm mic stand. And right next to that is a very, very popular, highly reviewed, highly rated, cheap option offered by Amazon Basics. And yes, the Amazon Basics is an actual purchase of mine. And I'm going to tell you why it was a terrible purchase. And at the end, it actually cost me more money than just going with the professional studio quality one. Full disclosure, my studio one stays at the studio, but I'm converting everything, even my home studio, my home office, to professional mic stand equipment. And I thought the Amazon Basics, I could get away with it when doing talking heads here, but I quickly realized I couldn't. So let's dive into a comparison of these two mic stands. And I'm going to show you why sometimes it doesn't make sense to cheap out on really important gear and where those cheap components are and how they likely will always fail. So this is the Amazon Basics Boom microphone stand. It's a tripod microphone stand and it has quite a bit of reach. I mean, to be fair, it gets pretty high, but some of the most important components are completely missing in the design, and at $30 or so, kind of makes sense. So let's take a closer look. Right off the bat, there's a lot more plastic throughout this mic stand. Of course, they have to keep the costs down, but the most important components, or at least where you would think the majority of the money would go into, is also very cheaply designed. For example, this lock rod, which locks the tilt axis of the entire mic stand, is very poorly and outdatedly, if that's a word, designed. It's something that was used a long time ago. It didn't end up work. It's basically a clamp mechanism and it fails. And it fails rather often because of the components inside. You have a hard plastic rubbing on a metal and that clamp is clamping into each other and it's just not holding properly. So as you would expect, you get a lot of slippage. Likewise, the legs are not wide enough. The actual arms of each leg don't have any weight to them or any rubber garments or anything like that to prevent slipping or tilting over. And at the boom arm itself, although it's a metal component, and yes, it does extend out pretty high and pretty far for the boom arm doesn't have a counterweight on the opposite end. So tilting, slipping is a very, very common thing with this mic stand. And I usually don't put anything too heavy on it. Now, if I'm using my Sennheiser MKH50, for example, it never will tilt over. It's just not enough weight for it to actually tilt over, even fully extended out. But ironically, the Sennheiser 416, which is slightly heavier, sometimes it tilts over if I don't have it positioned on one of the legs. That's kind of odd, right? Forget about putting a full-size mic, like a full-size dynamic mic, the Shure SM7B or the Neumann, for example, my full-size condenser microphone, my Neumann TLM49. No way. This thing would topple over. It would constantly be slipping and creeping and tilting and all that stuff. And no matter how hard you tighten it, it's just not going to work. In contrast, let's check out the Tama Ironworks Studio Boom mic stand. And this is a studio quality boom mic stand. Right off the bat, much higher quality, much heavier, and all of the money went into the most important components, because this boom mic stand, studio quality boom mic stand, is actually pretty competitively priced. It only comes in at $170, and you're not only getting the arm, the top piece, but you're also getting the tripod stand, which is unheard of. I mean, most companies will just sell you the top piece at 100, 120 or so forth. So yes, this is still a budgeted mic. I mean, there's stuff that's way more expensive. We're talking about like $800. But for the average person that's serious about work and you're just going to like put mics on there, this is fine. Trust me, this is still studio quality. It is made in China, but it's made very well. And Tama has a reputation. They've been in the industry for a very long time. They're actually known for making mic stands and components for drums, drum overheads. So this particular stand has been around for a very long time, and it is rated like in the top 3. It's in the top 3, and it's oftentimes, because of its price, 1 or 2. So put it that way. Let's talk about the components. With the Ironworks Studio Boom mic stand, you're going to get an all metal construction. There's metal everywhere. Very little plastic. Actually, I can't find plastic on it. Maybe the plastic clips that hold the microphone wire are probably the only cheap thing that I can point out. Starting from bottom to top, the tripod legs have a huge rubber garment on each leg to prevent it from toppling over. Also, the legs extend out pretty wide. Now, they're not long, but they hold their ground really, really well. Every tightening lever throughout the entire stand is made of really good, high quality metal material with a clamp mechanism, not just a screw that screws into, a rod, actually clamps down to keep things from sliding or creeping on you. And then if we move up, the lever to extend out the mic stand, again, all metal, really responsive, a clamp design, not just some, weird pinhole design. It actually clamps down on the rod itself. Moving up even further, one of the most important pieces, the lever arm. The tightener for the lever arm is a completely different design. It's a bunch of steel shafts or steel shims, and again, they're being used together to create that clamping force. This is an updated modern day design. You're not using 75-year-old technology, and you don't need to clamp it too hard. That's another thing I really wanted to point out. With the Amazon Basics, I got to torque it down, and it's still barely catching. But with the Ironworks, I barely have to do anything. You can feel it. You just barely apply some force, and you can feel that it's holding, it's clamping down just fine, not overly clamping, anything like that. It's very responsive, very tactile, and that's it. I mean, I could bounce the microphone. It's not going to creep. It's not going to start falling down, nothing like that. Really well made. At the boom arm, you get a thinner rod that extends out, that telescopes. And this gives it a very professional look, very professional feel, and gives you that extra reach. And if you're shooting videos and things like that, you don't have this big, thick, clunky boom arm in the way of the camera. It's a much more appealing, thinner arm that's in frame. This mic stand has dual purpose for me. Yes, I use it for my music content and making music and singing and putting big condenser mics on there and having no issues there. But I also use it for my videos, client work, talking heads, YouTube, you name it, corporate interviews, as a boom mic, as a boom pole when I don't have a boom operator. If it's just going to be an interview style, and just boom my mics overhead, and it works fantastic. It is heavy. Keep that in mind. A lot heavier than the Amazon Basics. Tama does make a lighter version, but I think that it's not that heavy, and it's pretty easy to lug around or put on a cart or something like that if you have to. So why does any of this matter? As I said before, take care of your expensive equipment with proper quality equipment. It seems very obvious, but you're going to save more money. What do I mean by that? The Amazon Basics, for example, yes, it's only $30. Sometimes you can get it for $20 when it's on sale. But after 3 to 6 months, I started noticing that it was failing. It was starting to tilt. It was starting to slip and creep and fall down and all that stuff. And I'm not talking about like tip over. I'm talking about the boom arm would just start to creep randomly. Put it this way. It can barely hold my Sennheiser 416. I'm not kidding. At this point right now, I've only had it for a year. It barely holds that mic. It will start creeping and falling and slipping and all that stuff, the boom arm. It doesn't topple over. You can use sandbags or water bags or whatever to keep it in place. But it's crazy that the boom arm is already sagging and drifting on that mic. I know folks that will just go out and buy another one or go to Guitar Center and think they're getting like a little bit more expensive one at maybe $50 and thinking it's going to be better quality. But they always end up failing under a year, under 6 months. And that's just throwing money away. So why do I recommend the Ironworks made by Tama or Tama? For the money, it's high quality. And it's an all-in-one design at $170. That might seem like a lot, but it's really not. You're getting the arm and you're getting the tripod stand. And again, there's really expensive stuff at $800, $1,000, and that's like made for big old tube condenser mics that cost $10,000, $15,000, and you need the absolute best, where failure is not an option and the likelihood of failure is virtually non-existent. I can tell you with the Ironworks, for what I'm doing, failure is almost non-existent. And that's why all of my mic stands at the studio and now at the home studio will be the Ironworks. That's it for me, guys. I hope you found this video informative, and if you did, please consider subscribing and joining our channel membership so we can continue making videos like this one. Take care, everybody.